Hi, welcome to your capstone, where we are going to talk today about voluntary and mandated microbiological sampling plans and shelf life testing. So, again, this is a thought exercise. You are not required to go down to the lab and test your product. You are required to think about what would be necessary to test your product. So, again, HACCP programs require validation of processes to make sure products are safe. Retailers want to know the shelf life and the quality of products to make sure that they are not taking on liability when purchasing your product. Let's think about my banana muffins here and walk through some of these questions together. So, is my testing voluntary or mandatory? Certain commodities have mandatory programs, and do make sure to go to the relevant policy. So, if you are making fresh cut salads, do not go to the meat manual procedures. Make sure you are going to the policy relevant to the Processed Products Act. If you are making dairy products, make sure you are going to the dairy regulations. So, each different program, so meat and poultry, for example, has its manual procedures, and they have a whole section on sampling and testing protocols. Same with dairy. Make sure to go and research the appropriate program to identify if there are mandatory testing requirements for your product. If you are in that non-regulated sector, like my banana muffins here, like certain baked goods, variety of non-meat containing products, you may be doing voluntary testing. And that's okay. Just indicate that it is voluntary, but make sure you've researched it appropriately. Secondly, make sure you identify what are you going to be testing. And so make sure to refer to the appropriate documentation. So if you have not accessed the Compendium of Analytical Methods from Health Canada, I have sent those out to people in your class to share. These are the regulated methods by Health Canada indicating this is the method you should be doing to test your product. And these are validated methods. They have been proven by Health Canada to meet the requirements for testing of food products. So there's a whole bunch of different methods. I don't think anyone's making ice cream and milk, but there are testing methods specific to a variety of commodities. Section 1 is reasonably good. Section 2 is actually even better. And this is where you're going to see things like measuring pH in hermetically sealed containers, measuring Clostridium botulinum, measuring E. coli 157H7, measuring Listeria. These are validated methods, and I highly recommend that you use these as your framework for setting up new methods, new protocols for evaluation of food products. So, thinking of my banana muffin, I am not a regulated product under the historical commodities, and so I am really not worried either about some of the primary pathogens, because again, it's an intermediate to low moisture food product. I am more concerned about spoilage. And so spoilage in this type of product could be from lactic acid bacteria or from total yeast and mold. So I'm interested in MFHPB number 22 and MFHPB number 18 in particular. But again, do make sure to go through and identify if there are additional methods that you need to be looking at. MFHPB 18. And there's my method. This is where I do want to go through and make sure that this truly is indeed what I'm looking for. But it's applicable to enumeration of viable aerobic bacteria, including psychrophilic, mesophilic, or thermophilic bacteria in foods. Fantastic. That sounds like what I'm after. And I can see what the core principle is. I can see what the collection of samples is going to be. Oh, and it says cross-reference to Appendix B of Volume 1. This is why you need a copy of Volume 1. But here is my method. Oh my goodness, everything is set. Sorry, I'm making a video right now. So, I have my method here, and I'm going to be able to go through and read what the procedure is, preparation of my dilution series, identifying what the plating is going to be, how long do I need to incubate it for, how am I going to count. Fantastic! This is exactly what I want to see. And in particular, that collection of samples is going to be important. Am I able to get it? I will have to cross-reference that, but do make sure to go into Blackboard and read the documents that I've got there for you. So, I'm going to refer to those methods and the appropriate appendices for sampling so that I can find out how many samples are relevant for the type of analysis I'm going to do. Secondly, do I need to do environmental testing? So, difference between product testing and environmental testing. If you are a product subject to the Listeria policy, you will be required to do environmental testing. Do you need to do additional environmental testings? In many cases, to validate for the efficacy of sanitation procedures, they will often do ATP or total plate count testing. Do you need to do this in your environment? Ask that question, think critically, and go ahead and do that. Then you need to think about what's your frequency. So are you going to do it every lot? Think through using a common sense-based approach, but also reflect back on any relevant policies necessary. What method are you using? Please attach the method and give a brief summary of what you need to do. I want to make sure that you're reading it for understanding. I don't expect you to run it, but do you have a clear vision of what you would be doing in this test and what sort of procedures you'd be doing? Some tests are where you're doing plate counts, other tests you may be doing MPN values, or you may be using some sort of bioluminescence. I want to make sure that you have read the method and have an understanding of it. Then, last but not least, I do want you to think about an experimental method for your shelf life testing. So, in certain cases, products are going to be defined for the shelf life based off of how much microbial spoilage. And so microbial spoilage is going to typically be total plate count, total yeast and mold. However, if your product's subject to Listeria, you may be concerned about outgrowth of Listeria during the shelf life of the product. In other cases, your food product may be, especially all of you who are working in the frozen segment, it may not be relevant to be looking at the microbial testing for looking at spoilage. Rather, it may be more focused on organoleptic testing, looking at difference testing or acceptability testing of your product over time. So do think through what would be the appropriate shelf life parameters for your product, and identify just the names of your methods that you would use to test to make sure you have a quality product, and identify what the length of your shelf life is going to be. Last but not least, we know very well that more and more food companies are getting out of the lab business and taking advantage of contract laboratories to fulfill their microbiology and shelf life testing. As GFSI integrates into more and more companies, the requirement for ISO 17025 certification on testing labs makes it not very practical for food companies to run their own labs because it's a cost that's necessary to have that certification. So I do want you to find me an appropriate contract lab that could run this analysis and just put their contact information, perhaps a website, a telephone number, a link to a page where you could connect with the company and identify that indeed they offer this service. So this is a reasonably straightforward, but again, you do have some research, and I will make sure that copies of the analytical procedures from Health Canada are available for you in the capstone file. Take care, have fun, and we'll see you soon.